Hi everybody, CohhCarnage here with a thoughts video on Avowed. So, Avowed is a game that I really enjoyed. As somebody who's played Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, I found the game to be soaked with lore, which I loved. Tons of references to things that I'd seen and played before. I found the exploration a huge amount of fun. I loved the world, it was vibrant. I loved stumbling upon, random kind of side objectives in the world, figuring out something happened there, the environmental storytelling of the area. Very classic Obsidian, which I really appreciated. On top of that, the combat, although not what I was expecting at a much more arcadey clip, felt pretty dang good. And the translation they did do from Pillars of Eternity into that more action first-person, third-person world worked pretty dang well. I was very happy with how that felt, all the way to the end. Now, granted, I did respec multiple times, which probably helped keep it fresh. But especially as you gain like some of the more useful, powerful abilities towards the end of the game, I was kind of constantly mixing up my base rotation, which was fun, and I definitely enjoyed that. So that brings me to the dialogue and story. The dialogue and story of Avowed, without spoilers, was I would say above average. It was not a Pillars of Eternity epic saga, but it was well done. It fit the lore. I definitely enjoyed everything that I saw in it. The characters were engaging, although I will say I feel like each kind of had a theme that they didn't really kind of break out of too much throughout the course of the game. But the themes were still, very relatable and interesting. I also really liked how clearly there was a lot of care and thought put into decision making, as not only are there some very major decisions throughout the course of the game that really make you like stop and think, but they do have palpable ramifications. In some cases, I heard like changing the entire group of people you talk to at the end of the game and how that whole conversation goes and everything. So I did really like that. That was good. So yeah, overall, my experience with Avowed was positive. I really enjoyed it, especially taking what was there. And what was there, I had a great time playing, and it was really fun. For Pillars of Eternity fans specifically, it's a pretty easy recommend from me on that alone, pretty much. However, we do have some other things to talk about. And that is, there's two kind of primary things here that I want to discuss in this video that kind of like play into each other. And the first is the fact that the game feels at more than a few points unfinished. And what do I mean by that? I mean that sometimes in this world, you'll go for half an hour. Everything you see looks pretty. You do a few optional encounters. Kind of everywhere you go, you follow breadcrumbs, and it all feels very complete and alive and immersive. Then you go a little bit off the beaten path, say into the ocean. And the ocean is just dead and empty. Like literally dead. Like I spent a solid almost like hour at probably combined, like exploring around in the ocean. Just nothing there. It doesn't feel like they did that on purpose. It feels like it's not done. It feels like, especially when you go to other parts of the world and you're running around and it does feel really good. And there's so much in such a small area. And then you go to the ocean and there's like maybe one ship with some normal loot in like this entire giant open. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel complete. On top of that, I feel like that's a theme that kind of goes to multiple parts in the game. That kind of unfinished, incomplete feeling. I did like the combat, and I do like the skill system, but it's frankly like 30, 40% what I would have liked to see. Instead of having like actual Pillars of Eternity classes, which I was hoping they would, they kind of boiled it down to 3 very generic feeling classes, and then each of those is like this amalgamation of multiple big classes from PoE 1 into a much more simplified tree. Not a fan. Not a fan. I was really hoping that Avowed was going to be that first-person RPG that showed us you could have a big, awesome skill system behind it and still be an awesome game. It's not. They went the other direction with it. They took the giant, awesome thing it was based on and distilled it down to what's kind of, I guess, a more streamlined form. And I really just, I hate it. I don't like that at all. I really wish they would have taken the time to like broaden that out, really make it feel like Pillars of Eternity, have classes from it instead of the generic groups. way more abilities, way more passives. Like we see entire classes relegated to like a couple passives, like monk and stuff like that. And it just doesn't feel good. On top of that, you have like parts of the game that just don't quite feel fully fleshed out. Like the cities, for instance. You go into the cities and there's NPCs there. Now, I'm not saying that we should expect immersive sandbox levels of immersion. I'm not saying every NPC needs to have a full day-night cycle and a home and stuff like that, right? We don't need that. But I will say that there's a real discussion to be had on having more than just an NPC in the game world with one static repeating animation. That's not enough. So we cannot tell the game you need to have everything that sandbox immersion games have. We don't need to tell the game that, but we do need to say this is not enough. Like there needs to be a little bit more. Like even if your NPCs, you know, even if instead of day-night cycles, you just have like 10 doors around the city that every NPC walks to and disappears into at night. Or just have it so there's like 15 static waypoints in the city that some groups of NPCs randomly walk around to. Like there has to be something more than what they put in here, because what they put in here feels kind of like a college student designing a level and putting NPCs down and saying, I'll deal with that later. And then forgetting about it, because it just doesn't feel like Obsidian. It doesn't feel like that's up to the quality level of Obsidian. And again, the companion system is the same way. Like the companion system is actually a step down from Outer Worlds, which was really surprising. I was kind of expecting everything, kind of like KCD 1 to KCD 2. I was kind of expecting everything in Avowed to be like a step up from Outer Worlds. Companions were a pretty quick step down, like in terms of customization, in terms of like their relationship to the player. Like it was not good. Now, interesting enough, at first I was a little concerned, thinking like, oh man, like what is Obsidian thinking making these decisions? But we did get a little bit of insight during one of the Obsidian charity streams when the studio's design director, creative director, Josh Sawyer, when somebody asked him about companions not having these fuller features, he responded rather bluntly saying, oh, we didn't have enough time or resources. So that kind of, you know, that's kind of a double-edged sword, because in one arm, or on one hand, it's kind of like, oh, well, you know, it's good they wanted it deeper. But on the other hand, it's kind of like, damn, we did kind of get like an unfinished thing. So it's kind of both, you know, like, which is a little frustrating, because as I get to the end of this thoughts video, here's what I'm going to say. Avowed, what's in it is really, really solid. I loved my time playing what this game was good at. If all of the game was the quality level of the stuff that I liked, then I would say, oh yeah, this is probably a pretty easy $70 game. But the problem, and this gets to my last point here, is that the really good parts, although I really enjoyed them, the rest of it kind of really degrades that image of this is a really good AAA title. And it makes that $70 price tag real tough. In fact, it makes it a little kind of like, as a gamer, you start to get this weird feeling of being insulted. And what do I mean by that? I mean that it's a little insulting to gamers when you present something as a really massive, awesome experience worth $70. When you present something with that, when you set the price at $70, you are setting expectations to the player. You are telling the player this product is worth $70 of your money. So then when we get a product that has clearly unfinished things, in some cases like swaths of the map unfinished, NPCs standing still and not doing anything, that doesn't feel like a $70 game. And immediately expectations and reality start competing, and everyone's feeling about the game goes down. So the reason I'm saying this is because there's a lot of great things that Avowed does, but without the whole package being that good, $70 is not the play. This should have been like a $40 to $50 game. And it should have been a $40 to $50 game after what I'm hoping are the couple of patches Obsidian is going to do to really amp up some of these problems, which they've already said they're going to keep working on it. So that's kind of where we are with Avowed. Like, it's a project with problems, but there is a very solid core, a very solid core. And I think that barring what the game is, nothing that's in it can't be addressed, which is awesome. But I would argue that it should be addressed, and especially for now, I would argue mostly best experienced on Game Pass until they kind of go through all that stuff. So that's kind of how I'm feeling. I do want to stress that although the game does have some problems, I did really enjoy it, like all the way to the end. I was worried, especially coming from some other games I played over the course of the last half year, we'll say. I was really concerned that I would come out of Avowed feeling like very underwhelmed, but I didn't. I got all the way to the end. I enjoyed our ending. I liked all the decisions we made up to that point. The companion dialogue felt good. The quests felt good. Like there were many times when I was like very emotional and happy about what I was doing, sometimes sad and frustrated, and that all worked out really well. So in that regard, I was very glad that kind of soul was in there that I was looking for. I will say, as a giant Pillars of Eternity fan, that probably had a big part to do with it, because they did a great job putting Pillars of Eternity lore in the game. But you know what? It was fun, and I had a great time with it. So anyway, this is my longer thoughts video on Avowed. I hope you do enjoy it as much as I did. Game has some problems, but the core is solid, and I hope we see them kind of continue to shape this clay into something even more amazing as we go forward. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you for another thoughts video. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.